In this video, let's apply the Friction Finder Eliminator to your computer. As a reminder, the goal is to make your computer to be a flexible structure for you so you can be productive wherever you are whenever you're using your computer. Your computer is part of your structure, the foundation of your productivity. I have here the eliminator filled out. This is the blank one as a point of reference for you. I covered up portions here so it does not distract us. I'll use myself as an example how before my computer was not set up as a flexible structure to make me productive and what I did to change that. Let me go ahead and make this bigger so we can see how I did that. First, let's define what action I wanted to take whenever I open my computer or my laptop. Whenever I use my computer, I want to be able to start my one thing priority. In my other course, much more in depth, I talked about the one thing priority. In simple terms, what that means is I try to do one thing that will move the needle for me that day so that I can be productive. Now, when I open my computer, that would be the starting point, and the action completed would be actually starting my one thing. I say starting because that's important. Once I start my priority for that day, I know I'll be able to finish it through or make a big dent of it so that I could be productive that day. So the act of actually starting it is important. That's why in the action I didn't put finishing my one thing, but it's actually starting my one thing. But most of the time, I can't even start my one thing. So what happened? It would be an hour and I'm trying to figure out what happened. I started my one thing and I don't know how to answer it. As I mentioned in my previous videos, when you ask someone about friction, because our brain was not trained to think that way, we usually don't know what happened to my hour. So this friction finder eliminator is meant to help us break that down. And this is such game changer because it's so easy to do. It literally takes me 30 minutes or less to do it. But when I complete a friction finder eliminator, the ROI is not just huge, but it's exponential because once you repeat this for the different phases or actions of your life that is causing you to be unproductive or not reach your goal, you'll start seeing patterns of where your frictions are usually happening. And that knowledge of finding patterns will help you create the systems, which is the next layer of productivity. Structure is the foundation, and then the systems is the next layer of productivity. So it'll help you find out how to fine tune your systems. Again, it took me 30 minutes or less to fill this out, but let me go ahead and explain it to you because the explanation takes longer. Here is what I did. I tried to figure out for myself, okay, from the moment I start the action of opening my laptop to starting my one thing, what happens in between? So I became a detective for myself. I told myself, okay, the first thing that happens is I would see my desktop background. Then once I see my desktop background, I would open my browser. I use Google Chrome. So I open my Google Chrome browser. You might have Safari or Firefox or any other browser. And then I would open my Google Drive, which is my cloud. After I open my Google Drive, I would be seeing many tabs open because sometimes Google Chrome would ask me, oh, you didn't close your Chrome properly. Do you want to open the previous tabs that you were using and restore them? And I would say yes. Then next thing I know, there'd be like 100 tabs open and I feel overwhelmed. And then I would see email notifications as well. Remember, you asked for step one, what specific steps mattered the most to you? For me, these were the specific steps that mattered the most to me before reaching and completing the action of actual starting my one thing. Then the second step of friction finder eliminator is to ask yourself or ask myself, how did I feel in each of these steps? And this is how I plotted my feelings. When I start the action of actually opening the laptop, I was neutral, it's easy. Then when I look at my desktop background, I used to have my kiddos background picture there, and I would feel happy because I see their cuteness and it inspires me to go ahead and be more productive and remind me that that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then I would open my browser and I would have a little bit negative feeling because once I open my browser, then there would be shortcuts of the different apps that I've been using. And then I start thinking, should I open Canva and try to be creative, or should I open that document? But usually I could say, okay, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm just going to go move forward. Sometimes I do fall into that trap, but okay, most of the times I don't. So I'll plot it as one. Then I would open my drive, my Google Drive, and I would feel distracted and a bit overwhelmed as well because I have so many folders, I have so many documents, I'm not sure where to actually click. Sometimes I get over it, sometimes I don't get over my overwhelm. Most of the time, I would just focus on the search bar and search for the document that I'm supposed to do today or use to start my one thing. So, okay, I'll just put it as one. And then about seeing many tabs open, that usually causes me a lot of negative feelings. That's why I put it under three, because then I feel like, okay, I was doing this, this, and this. Maybe I should start and finish this one. Or why was I doing my one thing again? So that would cause me to have the biggest friction in terms of stopping me from being productive and actually completing the action of starting my one thing. So I have it as three. And then seeing my email notifications, that is a number five negative feeling because I remember when I used to be a lawyer at other law firms. By the time I opened my computer, I would have 100 emails from my clients, from my bosses that would just make me anxious and believe that I have to answer all of them right away. Somehow we were trained to think about emails that way, that if we see an unread email, we have to answer it right away. I had to untrain my brain for that. So that's what would happen when I open my laptop. That's why an hour later is when I complete the action of actually starting my one thing. The beauty of this is I was able to identify four frictions, four steps that was stopping me from being productive. And by identifying the depth or the intensity of those frictions, I can focus myself or target which one I should eliminate, because there are some that you might not be able to eliminate, but there are those that are really bad, like seeing email notifications. That's a five for me. I really should prioritize that in terms of eliminating that friction. And how I eliminated that was simple. I actually just closed the tab and not have the email open the entire day, the entire time that I'm working on my one thing, so that I am not anxious and not seeing my email notifications. So once I did that, then that friction became neutral for me. In terms of seeing many tabs open, what I did was I actually learned the how to use the Google Tab Organizer. It's so easy. My friction before why I wasn't doing it was because I didn't know how to use it. But once I did, then it was so much easier. So once I did that, then that became neutral. Now these two, if they're not really that much of a priority for me, or I can actually just overlook them, then I don't need to have to do something. But if it is, then I'll create something to eliminate this friction as a system. For example, I still want to optimize my productivity and streamline it. So opening my drive, because the folders were the ones that were the folders in the different documents were the ones that was causing me to be distracted and overwhelmed. I created a system on how I organize my folders and my document. So once I did that, it became a neutral feeling. And then opening my browser, I use Google Chrome, as I mentioned, Now, whenever I open my browser, I have it on default to have my Google Calendar as the default. So it's in my face. So the Google Calendar is motivating me and telling me the time is now and this is what you're supposed to be doing. So it reminds me, reinforces the one thing I'm supposed to do. So I just move on. My desktop background, if let's say the desktop background is something that is your friction, because when you see your family picture, then it starts reminding you of, oh, I need to call the doctor, I need to get their medication, I need to call the school. If that's what happens, it's probably better to take out your family or your kids picture from your desktop background. You still love them, mama. It's just that you don't want to be distracted, and being focused and productive is helpful for the family. So this is for the entire family. You can put your pictures in your phone or in print them out on a frame. But for your computer, if that is distracting you, making you think of other things you need to do, take it out. And what I did for me was I took it out because I was getting distracted by my kids' cuteness. And so I changed it into just this purple background because I like purple. So you can set up your desktop to have just a plain background. So it causes me no feeling whatsoever. So I am neutral. So as you can see, what happens with the friction finder eliminator is I now have a frictionless uh, path towards completing the action of starting my one thing. It's now frictionless. Again, it's easy to fill out the friction finder eliminator. It takes 30 minutes or less. The bonus is that you see patterns emerging, the ROI is exponential, and it's a permanent effect on you because now these things, once you set them up to eliminate your friction, those frictions are not going to come back unless something triggers those friction to come back. But most of the time, those frictions are gone. And so the effect is much more permanent than the temporary compliance fuel actually gives us. Another important thing to remember about why the friction finder eliminator is very helpful for our ADHD brain is because it's a visual representation of our journey to actually achieving a particular action or goal. Visual representation is very important for our ADHD brain. We need a second brain because of our limitations with our executive functions. Specifically, our short-term memory is not as optimal as other people without ADHD. That's why we will forget what is causing us from starting and then acting, completing the action, and what was stopping us in between, unless we specifically write them down and create this visual representation of our friction. It'll be hard for us to just hold it in our brain. And so think of it as our ADHD brain needs to have not just our brain here, but a second brain, which is an external brain that would visualize it for us. That's why we need these forms, we need post-its, we need paper, notebooks. That's our second ADHD brain. We'll talk about that too in our other videos and my other course, but just keep in mind that's one reason too why the friction finder eliminator is very helpful for us, because it's a visual representation that helps our short-term memory remember, basically, and act on it. And once you act on your friction by eliminating it, you can forget about it. And who cares about your short term memory about all these other steps? You already set your structure up and you're good to go. Excellent, right? I'll see you in the next video.